let's get started sewing our 18th century pocket. So you're gonna need the fashion fabric piece with the rectangle that you transferred from the pattern. You need that one piece, and you need one piece of lining fabric. Take a look at your lining fabric. You've got a right side and a wrong side. You're gonna lay it down with the right side up, because when we are sewing this, we wanna put right sides together. So this is the right side of the lining, this is the right side of the fashion fabric. We're going to line it up with each other, one on top of the other. You will also need your straight pins, because we're gonna pin right along this box. You don't have to pin directly on the line. You can pin beside it. And my recommendation is to pin as I am demonstrating in this video. We will remove these pins as we sew, and we will not sew over them. Make sure everything stays nice and flat. When you lay your fabric on top of each other, you want to make sure that your cut edges all line up. You don't want any kind of like, it's off by like a lot, that your pocket's gonna come out wrong. So make sure your cut edges all match up to each other. I'm gonna turn this around. It's much easier for me to pin this direction. Now, if you notice the way that I pinned this, if you follow the pins around, they're all going the same direction if you follow it as one path. We wanna do it that way on purpose, so that when we put it in the sewing machine, the heads of the pins are always facing you. Okay, let's take this to the sewing machine. Now, we are gonna sew along the outside edge of this box and all the way up around. Because my pins are facing this direction, I wanna start on this side of the box. I'm gonna line everything up really nice and straight. Come here, presser foot, or foot pedal. And we are going to backstitch and just follow this all the way around. Take your pins out as you go. Now, I did make a mark at the bottom of my center line. If you've done that, just watch and be careful that you actually come all the way to the bottom of the outside rectangle. I'm gonna go ahead and move both of these pins out of the way. Slow down, because I'm coming close to my corner. Okay, now we're gonna turn the corner. So needle down, presser foot up. Ooh, I'm off. I'm off by one stitch. Can you see that? So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pivot back, put my presser foot down, and I am going to go backwards one stitch. I just did it with the hand wheel. Now I'm exactly on my line. So if you go over, that's fine. You can just turn the hand wheel backwards till you get where you wanna be. Since this is such a narrow square, I'm actually gonna go across the bottom here by using the hand wheel instead of the foot pedal on the floor. So this way I land exactly on the bottom corner where I want to be. Okay, take my pins out as I go, and I'm stitching up the outside of the rectangle we drew. Nope. Take my fabric off the machine, clip your threads as you go. And now you can see we've sewn this outside box through both layers, just like that. Ooh, there's some sort of purple fuzz on here. Okay, so now you're gonna need your sewing scissors. So let's go grab those. Now that we have this rectangle sewn on, the line in the middle, we want to cut open because this right here becomes the opening for our pocket where your hand slides in. So we're gonna cut right on this line. When you get to the bottom of the line, you're gonna stop and pivot your scissors and cut a triangle like that. But be very careful you do not cut through any of your stitching at any point here, because then you'll have to completely recut your pattern for these two parts and start over. So I'm just very carefully keeping my fabric flat on the table as well as my scissors. Carefully and slowly, I'm gonna cut right on that center line. Come to the very end, turn, cut a very tiny corner very carefully, making sure I get as close to the corner here as possible without cutting through my stitches. This allows this corner to turn nicely when we turn this right side out. Okay, so as you can see, there's that little triangle. This opens up. And now we need to take this to the ironing board. So now we have our piece that we just finished on the ironing board. What I'm gonna do before anything else is I'm gonna iron over these stitches to kind of set the threads into the fabric. This is a good practice because the heat makes the fibers of the thread kind of shrink up a little bit and embed themselves into the fabric better, which makes a nice crisp look overall. Okay, so if at this point you're like, what are we doing? This is weird. Trust the process. If you have felt at any point up to this moment, I don't understand how this is gonna turn out, that's okay. Trust the process. So what we're gonna do now is we need to flip all of this right side out. So I'm gonna take one side, kind of fold it up together, and then around and under the other. It's gonna feel weird, but you'll get your fabric right sides out. And what I want to do is I actually want to leave my, move that out of the way, make my fashion fabric nice and flat on the table, and then put my lining on the top. So what we want to do is we want to press this edge so that it is nice and clean. So what you're gonna have to do is kind of put your fingers underneath and roll that edge, leaving a very tiny portion. See how small that is? Very tiny portion of the fashion fabric peeking out here. The reason for this is we are actually forcing the fabric to roll towards the outside towards the inside, so that when this is done, you don't have some of the lining fabric peeking out like that. So when you roll your fabric at this seam, make sure you can still see some of the fashion fabric that is the outside. Okay, so I'm gonna press this. I'm gonna press one side and then I'll press the other, and then we'll do the bottom corner. Use steam, it helps. Okay, now I'm gonna do the other side. Actually, it's a little easier for my hands, I think, if I switch this around. I'm gonna do the same thing before. I'm gonna kind of roll at my edge to get the stitching as close to the edge here, because I don't want a big fold like this, because that's gonna make this pocket opening bigger and there's a gap there. So you're gonna kind of roll at it. Get that out of the way. Feel free to take your time to get it exactly where you want it to be. Hold it with your fingers and then press. Okay. So now we've got some bumpiness happening here at the bottom. So we're gonna try and smooth that out with our fingers. What does it look like from the right side? It's a little rough from the right side. Okay, so the reason that this bumpiness is happening is because I actually need to get a little bit closer to the stitching for this to smooth out. So I'm gonna turn it back, wrong side out. Now you could leave it like that, it's fine. It bothers me, so I'm gonna do it right. I'm gonna smooth everything back out to where it's right sides are touching each other. And I'm gonna take my snips I'm gonna come in here a little bit closer to my stitching without cutting through my stitches. Okay, let's see if that helps. Flip this back around. Since I've already pressed this one part, it kind of wants to fall where I've pressed it. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now that is smoothing out. Still a tiny bit bumpy, but not nearly as bad. I can press some of this action out. So I'm gonna kind of go around to smooth it out a bit. Hit it with lots of steam. So there's a little tiny divot there. That's okay. I don't think you can really tell that much. That part's also gonna be on the inside. And make sure that you are pressing from the wrong side and the right side of the fabric. Remember how I said in class that often the difference between something looking like an amateur made it versus a professional is how many times it was pressed in the process. Okay, so this is all pressed and ready to go. We want to do one more row of stitching around the outside to kind of lock where this is folding in place. So let's take this back to the sewing machine. This next step is called top stitching because we're going to stitch on top of our fabric and it's going to be a visible seam. So we want to stitch as close to this edge as we can. I'm going to start at the very top up here. And I'm kind of lining up the edge of my pocket with this edge of there's a little window in your presser foot. I'm lining up the edge of my fabric with that edge right there. Because I can see that. Oop. Okay, let me start a little further on my fabric because it didn't want to pull through because I was starting too close to the edge. As you come closer to the bottom down here, don't let your fabric open up like this. Keep it nice and straight and aligned with each other. So when you come close to the corner, it's gonna stay where you want it to be and you won't accidentally put in a wrinkle by sewing. Okay, so now we can see we have top stitched all the way around our pocket opening. So now when this part is on the body, trim my threads, they're a distraction. When this is on the body, this is where your hand slips into the pocket.